Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you. My name is Meg and this is Oakley. Welcome to my little channel where I talk a lot about yoga, tips and tricks, and things that you can practice at home, and also some health and wellness too. I am a fully qualified yoga teacher, beautician and masseuse, and I've been working in health and wellness now for almost 10 years. Today I am going to be show you how to kind of get deeper into your forward folds. So it's going to be quite complex as to how I describe it, and I hope it makes sense. But basically, it's getting this movement of tipping your hip bones forward and tipping your pelvis forward, almost like a bowl, to enable you to have more movement. So one of the best things that you're going to need for this is a block. It will make a big difference whether you've got a block or not, especially if you're completely new to this and you've never done this before. I was going to try and say good grippy mat. A good mat is optional. It's not a complete necessity for this because it's a very isolated movement and we're just trying to get a tiny movement. But a block or some cushions, like quite a few cushions to sit on, is going to be really quite helpful to be able to do this. But other than that, you don't need anything else. And when you're ready, we will get started. So when I describe this movement of a hip hinge, what I mean is that moving those hip bones and rolling them forwards. So when you're coming into, let's say, bound angle and you're holding onto your toes, if I keep my hips exactly where they are and I try to come down, all I'm doing is rounding over my spine. Yes, you're very helpful. All I'm doing is rounding over my spine and I'm not really going anywhere. If I can roll my hip bones forward and kind of stick my tailbone out behind and then come down, I have a lot more space to come down. So this is why it's so important to practice your hip hinges and to get that hip hinge there. So one of the best things you can do to practice this movement is to practice your cat-cow spines. So when you're coming into your cat-cow spines, your hands are underneath your shoulders, knees are underneath your hips. As you inhale, you're lifting the tailbone, dropping the belly and squeezing the shoulder blades together, gazing forwards. And when you need to take your exhale, you tuck the tailbone under, lift the belly and take the chin in towards the chest. So you can practice doing these and creating this movement. And what this is going to do is enable that movement into your hip bones. So you're using your stomach muscles and your back muscles to move your pelvis and to move it forwards and backwards. You can then isolate the movement by just moving the lower part of your back, so keeping the upper part completely still and just moving the lower part of the back. So that's kind of your first step into being able to move your hips or to do a hip hinge. From here, I like to kind of work in on bound angle because it's a case of pushing. So you've learned what your cat-cow spines are. Cat-cow spine, tailbone lifted and squeezing the shoulder blades together, gazing forward. Cat spine, tailbone tucked under, lifting through the belly and spreading through the shoulder blades. So you know what to do with each one. And this is when it then becomes a little bit easier when you start thinking about moving your hips. So if we come into bound angle with your toes together, wrapping the fingers either around the toes or around your ankles. I prefer the toes. And then we're thinking cat-cow spine here. So we're kind of pushing onto the feet through the hands, pushing the chest forward, squeezing the shoulder blades together and lifting the tailbone up. You can then do the same thing, but tuck the tailbone under and spread through the shoulder blades. So it's almost like we're doing our cat-cow spines, but sitting in a bound angle. And this is just going to start to get you to move. So you're pushing on those feet to move your hip bones forwards and stick your tailbone out behind and tuck the tailbone under and spread the shoulder blades apart. So this is kind of your second level into getting that movement there. And once you feel a little bit more comfortable, you'll be able to kind of feel, and you kind of can tell when you're pushing on the feet and when you're not. So if you then try and do the same thing again without pushing on the feet, it's probably a lot harder to stick your tailbone out behind and to kind of roll your hip bones forwards If you hold onto the feet, it's a lot easier to get that movement. So this is when we then start coming into level number 3. And you have a few different options to get into this, but this is when you will need your block. So making sure that you're sitting on the block. I like to come into a wide-legged fold for this. I just find it a lot easier. Some people find staff pose, so their feet together, easier, and some people find bound angle easier in this on this step, but I definitely find it easier to have my legs apart. So we're going to take the hands onto the hip bones. So you should be able to feel them here. They're like little marbles at the top of your legs and at the base of your tummy. And just try and focus on rolling them back and then rolling them forwards. If this is the first time you've done this, you might find that there's absolutely no space at all. But think about sticking your tailbone out and then tucking your tailbone under. Sticking the tailbone out and tucking the tailbone under. It helps if you're sitting right at the edge of your block, so that as you kind of tip forward, you've got the space to tip just that little bit more forwards. So we're tipping the pelvis forwards and then curling under, tipping it forwards and then curling it under. So this might take a few attempts. You might want to try it with the feet together. You might want to try it in bound angles, so the toes together and knees apart. Just play around with it when you're sitting on a block and see how you go from there. But yeah, you're tipping them forwards and taking them back. Maybe place the hands onto the hip bones and watch them as you do it, or feel it as you do it. And you can actually feel them roll forwards and roll back. Once you start to get comfortable using a block, that's when you can then start to take the block away and do the same thing again. So again, I find it easier being in a wide leg fold. So your hands go onto the hips, you tuck the tailbone under and then stick it out behind. Tuck it under and stick it out behind. And this is just creating that movement, and you'll be able to feel the hips moving, but you'll also be able to play around with it if you want to. Just try not moving the hips at all and leaving them where they are and trying to come down. And you'll find it's just a case of like your spine curls and your head is trying to get down into the mat. When you then are hip hinging, so you're able to roll those hip bones forwards, it's almost like you're taking the chest down towards the mat rather than the head. So you're rolling those hip bones forwards, and then you've got a lot more space to move down. And instead of trying to take the head down, try and bring the chest down. And you can do the same thing in a staff pose, roll the hip bones forwards and back. And then maybe try keeping them still and just rolling down, and then think about pushing them forwards. Chest comes down, coming down. So it's something that you need to continually practice and work on. Hip hinges took me maybe 6 months to get. It's not something that happens really quick and easy, but it's worth it because you think how many different forward folds that you do in yoga. So if you start to learn to create that movement, it definitely helps. Another way that I find easier as well, so often when I'm talking about it, is I'll be doing this movement from a seated position, because again, it's similar to doing cat-cow spines, but with your hands on your knees, sitting on your feet. So this is another thing that you can do as well, just to get that movement there. So just thinking about tucking the tailbone under and pushing it back. And when you're coming into that forward fold, think about really pushing that hip, rolling those hips forward and really pushing your tailbone back and behind. I hope this video helped. And yeah, like I said, something you have to keep practicing, something that comes with time, but it definitely helps across the board with so many different poses in yoga. Please like this video, and please go and please go and subscribe to my channel. That's for the words I was trying to say. It means so much to me when you guys hit the subscribe button, and it means you get a notification every time that I post onto YouTube. So yes, please hit the subscribe button. I am on Instagram and TikTok as well, and I look forward to practicing with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.